Today we are going to learn about the aggregate function. Aggregate function is the most basic function in R. It is used quite often and it's one of the most repetitively used function. So let's look at the documentation of aggregate. So basically it says that computes summary statistics of data subsets, splits the data into subsets, computes summary statistics for each and returns the result in convenient form. So if you check the parameters in aggregate function, it has got x, which is an R object, usually a data frame. Then by is the grouping elements, on which elements you want to group by. And fun is the function. So on each group, which function do you want to apply? So these are the main parameters which are required in aggregate. We'll take an example so that it's easy to understand. So I already have one data frame here, so let's just run it. So if you check the structure, there are two columns, one which is val, which goes from 1 to 10, and another which is group. So basically this column group will be our grouping variable. So it has got A, B, C and D groups. When to use an aggregate function? I think whenever we need only one row for each group, that is a perfect time when you can use aggregate function. Let's do an easy one. Let's take sum of val in each group. So basically if we check the syntax, so it goes like aggregate, then the variable that you want to aggregate, so which is df$val, and the by argument has to be a list. So let's do list df group, and the fun argument has to be sum. So if we do this, okay, so it gives us sum of each group. So as you can see, so for A group the sum is 3, which you can see here. For B group, 3 plus 4 plus 5 is 12, which you can see here, and similar for all other groups. So it basically gives sum of all the group values. But this is ugly kind of, even the syntax and also the output which we get. So for example, we get column with names group.1 and x. So to overcome this, we have another option, which is we can use a formula syntax in aggregate. So if we do, this is val and this is the group on which we want to aggregate. So not necessarily this will always be one. So in case if you want to group by multiple columns, you can just do plus and that column name. So this will help you to group by multiple columns. Formula syntax is this val tilde group, then the data frame name, and then the function which you want to apply. So if we check, the output is still the same, but the way it represents is different. So the main benefit of this is we actually retain the column names. df is this, and so it retains the column names, group and val. Whereas in this case, it gives you some weird column names. So this is better, the syntax, and also if you check, this is way shorter than this. It looks clean and it's better. It's more readable as well. And also it doesn't require wrapping in list or mentioning the data frame name again and again. So here we do df$val, here we do list and then df$group. So instead this makes it very convenient to use. So we can also do, let's check how many rows are there in each group. So if we do this, it will give us number of rows in each group. So A has got 2 rows, B has got 3 rows, C has only 1, whereas D has got 4. Okay, so you should not use this I would say to calculate rows, but if you just want to calculate rows, you could instead have done only this. You could have got the same output in a convenient way. Anyway, so this was just an example to show how you can use this. So we can also use, anonymous functions. For example, if you want to take a mean of this, so one way is we do this. Which will give us mean by group. But another way to use the same is using anonymous function. So what does this mean is you do this and this. So this basically gives you the same output. For example, in certain cases you do not have to do this kind of simple operation. You do not want only sum by group. So for example, if you want to subtract 1 from each mean. So using anonymous function you could do this. So it subtracts 1 from each mean. So it's easy using anonymous function. If you have a complicated function which you want to apply on each group, so it's very easy with anonymous functions. Very common question on Stack Overflow basically is collapse the entire group into one row with comma separated values. So it means that the output should be 1 comma 2 for group A. Group B, it should be 3 comma 4 comma 5. You want to collapse into the group into only one row. Let me show you by doing it. It's this, and basically it's toString. So what this does is it creates one row for each group and it collapses all the values into comma separated values. So for example, in certain cases you do not want it to be comma separated. You want it to be separated by, let's say, dash, something like this, dash. Okay, so in that case this is a good use case to use anonymous function. So how do we do that? We can use space 0 x and collapse with dash. Oops, some error. Oh, I misspelled the function. Okay, so now instead of comma it's separated by dash. So it's quite convenient, right? Sometimes you only want this maybe. See, so it makes sense, right? So in this case we also made useful use case of the anonymous function and it gives you the expected output. So this kind of are very common. We want this kind of structure quite a lot often. So I had to show you one more example of usage of aggregate function. It's one of the question on Stack Overflow which I answered. It has got multiple groups and we need to find difference. So basically this is the data frame which we have and you need to group by year and month. So 2016 and 1 is one group, this, and 2017 and 2 is another group. You want to group by year and month and subtract the values. So this is what the input is and this is what the output should be. You do 40 minus 25, you get 15. You do 29 minus 22, you get 7. Similarly, 53 minus 20, 33, and so on. So how do we do this? Any guesses? You have used this, right? The only difference now is we have got two groups. So what we do is aggregate dot. So what this dot means is everything basically. So in the example which we saw, we used to mention explicitly that we want to aggregate val. So if we mention only dot, it will aggregate everything, whichever is there. On this two groups, year plus month. So these are the two groups on which we want to aggregate. This is the data frame name and diff. Diff is basically take the difference of values. If you do diff 12, 10, 9, it gives you value of 10 minus 12, 9 minus 10, like this. So it does diff. We aggregate on year plus month and then take the difference of the values, and it gives us this output. Clear enough? Okay, so I hope this explanation of aggregate was helpful. There are some other parameters as well which you can twist and turn according to your convenience in aggregate functions. So for example, another one is this na.action, which does as what needs to be done in case of na. Usually by default the value is na.omit, which means it removes the row in case of nas, but you can also pass na.pass, which will keep the values. So there are some other ways in which you could use this aggregate function, but the ones which I explained are the most common ones. So I hope this explanation of aggregate function was helpful, and if you have any questions about this, please let me know in the comment section, and we'll meet in the next video soon. See you, take care.